Hi bookworms, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about recommended crime fiction reads. Okay, so I've got 7 recommendations for you that are some of my favorite crime fiction and murder mystery reads. So let's get started. My first recommendation is by the one and only Queen of Mystery, Agatha Christie. So I absolutely love Agatha Christie. I think she's seriously a genius, and I don't know how she's able to come up with such intricate little details in all of her murder mysteries. So if you're looking for good, cozy murder mysteries that are set back in the I think it's the 1920s. I could be wrong. But my top recommendation for you is Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. This book is absolutely my favorite. I do love Murder on the Orient Express and some of the other Hercule Poirot murder mysteries, but And Then There Were None is really spooky. Basically, a bunch of strangers get a letter from a mysterious man, and they are invited to a really big house on a remote island, and one by one, people get murdered, so we need to figure out who's doing the murdering. And it's such a good book, and it's nice and short, and yeah, I would just highly recommend, if you are a big lover of murder mysteries, I would definitely recommend Agatha Christie's book. Now, the next book, this one took me a while to get through because it's a pretty big book, but I promise you, it's absolutely worth it. If you love, kind of more of the horror genre, I would definitely recommend Nosferatu by Joe Hill. This book is so creepy. I remember reading this, I think I read this about 3 years ago, and it really freaked me out. And again, it is a pretty long book, but I think it's worth it. It's a really great story with, again, a ton of details, and I think that's what makes it scarier. So basically, it's about Victoria Vick McQueen. And she has a weird knack for finding things. So if somebody loses something, she's able to find it by going through this really weird bridge in the woods right by her house. And then there's Charles Manx, good old Charles Manx, who likes to take children for rides in his Rolls Royce. Now, Charles Manx is kind of seen, he's kind of like a vampire. He sucks away children's souls and takes them to Christmas land. And I love Christmas. So the fact that Christmas is spooky in this book is both thrilling, terrifying, and totally awesome. So yeah, this book just goes around Christmas land, shows Charlie's twisted imagination, and one day when Vic is crossing through the bridge, she gets herself into trouble. Charlie Manx knows about her, and that's kind of how the story goes. But yeah, this book is incredibly creepy, and I highly recommend you pick this up if you're more into the horror type of genre. And if you didn't know, Joe Hill is actually Stephen King's son. This was my first Joe Hill book, and I really, really liked it. And there is also actually a TV show based on this book on AMC, and it's not exactly what I thought in mind, which was a little bit disappointing. I don't know. I'm not really a big fan because the book was just so good, but that's what happens when you do adaptations for books. Sometimes it can be disappointing. So this next book. This book has been highly talked about pretty much everywhere, and for good reason. There are some reviews also that say that this isn't entirely creepy or that it's kind of boring. Don't listen to those reviews. This book is absolutely amazing. The Whisper Man by Alex North. You guys, this book is really, how can I put this to make sense? It's really subtly creepy, and it makes you, because you're reading it and you're not actually seeing something like on a TV screen, you're able to visualize the most creepy thing while reading this book. So this book, essentially it's about the serial killer 20 years ago that abducted and murdered 5 residents, and his name was Frank Carter. And when he was finally caught, he was named the Whisper Man because he would lure his victims out by whispering in the middle of the night, like their name, because he'd find out their name and then whisper their name. So it's kind of creepy. I read like in 24 hours. It was absolutely creepy. I actually got scared reading it at night. Sometimes I had to put it down and pick up something a little bit lighter. But again, the creepiness is very, very subtle, and it creeps up on you. That's what creepy means. And I think that's what makes this book kind of scary and kind of thrilling. And I think it's a perfect book to read in the month of October if you're looking for something spooky that also has more of the crime fiction feel to it than a horror. And it also does have detectives in it, and it goes back from 20 years prior to present day, and I'd highly recommend this book. This is probably one of my favorite books of 2019. I said it. Yes, I did. It's highly anticipated, and then when I finally got it, I absolutely loved it. So pick this up. Do you see it? Pick it up. My next book that I would recommend. So let me just digress for a second. Thrillers have become super popular, especially domestic thrillers. And what I find, although I really love the genre, I find that domestic thrillers lately have been really similar. They've got the same type of plot. It's always the crazy wife or the crazy husband or somebody getting in between a marriage. It seems like I'm reading the same story over and over again. So when I picked up The Last Lie by Alex Lake, I've never read anything by Alex Lake before, but again, it is about a couple, they're married, something weird goes on, it affects their relationship, there's murder, there's crime, but this was done in a different way, and it's so refreshing when a domestic thriller is like that. I seriously highly recommend it. So this book, I'll just read the summary for you. The hitchhiker was a young woman in her late 20s or maybe early 30s. She was also completely naked. But that wasn't the most shocking thing about her. The most shocking thing was that the woman driving the car recognized her. She wasn't a hitchhiker, although there was no doubt she needed a lift. She was something completely different. The driver braked, coming to a halt a few meters past her, then opened her door. The young woman stared at her, her eyes wide and unseeing. She took a step towards the car, and the driver flinched, glancing around to see if there was anyone hiding in the shadows. There was nothing, just the hedges and the moon and the silence of the night. She looked back at the young woman. "Are you?" she said, then paused. "Are you her?" That's the summary. So, of course, it sounds incredibly intriguing. So when you start to read the book, you start to unravel who these two women are, who the husband is, and this was a really good thriller. If you're looking for something very binge-worthy, I would highly recommend you pick this up. By Alex Lake. I can't remember if I said his name. Then the next book. This book I read, I think, in February, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll probably remember that I talked about this book a lot, and I urged all of you to pick it up as well. It is No Exit by Taylor Adams. This was a really fun thriller. So it's not your typical crime fiction. It's more of a binge read kind of thriller, which I really liked. And if you're into that and are looking for something to read for this spooky month of October, I would definitely pick this book up. So basically, it's about this college student named Darby Thorne. She's on her way to go see her dying mother, and she ends up getting caught in a fierce blizzard in the Colorado Rockies. And she has no cell phone reception, so she ends up staying, I think it was at a gas station or a rest stop on the highway. Is trying to find a signal to call home. She notices this van that's parked right beside her, and inside the van is this little girl. Creepy. It's middle of a blizzard, and this little girl is like in the trunk of a van just sitting there. So clearly she's been kidnapped or something is going on. So there's no way to call for help. There are a couple of other people at the rest stop with her, and Darby is thinking which one of these people owns the van with the child in the back. So it's a really thrilling ride. It really reminded me of one of those like thriller movies that you watch that you're like, oh my God, what is about to happen? And it's kind of like edge of your seat. Oh, it's just so good. So yeah, if you are looking for something like that, I would highly recommend this book. Again, No Exit by Taylor Adams. again, I think this is one of my favorite reads of 2019. I definitely like The Whisper Man more just because it had a little bit more crime fiction to it, which I really like. But this one was super, super good. And then my last recommendation for the month of October, The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I think that's how you say his last name. You guys, this book was incredible. Again, also probably one of my favorites of 2019. I have a lot of favorites, can you tell? But that's not a bad thing. But this book was, oh my gosh, it was so, so good. When I finished this book, I literally sat there and I was like, what the heck did I just read? So good. This woman named Alicia, her life seems perfect, and she's a famous painter. She's married to an in-demand fashion photographer. She lives in a really big house overlooking London, and one evening her husband Gabriel returns home late from work, and Alicia shoots him 5 times in the face and never speaks a word again. Yeah, that's story. So crazy. So she never speaks a word. She refuses to talk. She refuses to talk to the police about exactly what happened, if she actually did the shooting, whatever the case may be. So she ends up in a psychiatric unit in North London, and a criminal psychotherapist named Theo is very captivated by Alicia's story. So he starts working at this hospital and is trying to get Alicia to talk, and secrets are revealed, thrilling things happen, it's a little bit spooky, and it's super, super good. So I would highly recommend this book. I would highly recommend all the books that I just talked about, obviously. This one was really good, and again, this one was more of a binge thrilling kind of read. It's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it a crime fiction read, but it was so, so, so good. Yeah, definitely pick that one up. So yeah, those are my recommended reads for the month of October. Let me know if you've read any of them, if you loved them, or if you didn't like them. I'd really like to chat about them. And I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much for coming to my channel, watching my second video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you. Bye.